In this lesson, we're going to continue in Job Setup. I have the file jobsetup2.mcam open. You can also continue with the file from the last lesson. First thing I want to do is I want to save this file as an IP version. So we'll save it as jobsetup2 IP. And I want to look at my levels. I want to make sure that I have 2D profile selected. This is where any new geometry I select is going to go on the active level with the green check. So I'm in wireframe and I'm going to go to turn profile. Before I do that, I want to check my line thickness and color. So my line thickness is on one down from the thinnest. You can put it where you like. And my line color is currently on blue. This probably would not go nicely against this purplish color here. So I'm going to come down and pick a darker color. Now I'll go to the turn profile in the wireframe tab. It wants me to select a body, surface, or polygonal mesh, which I'll do. And I can select end selection, or I can hit enter. Wants to know if I want to spin or slice. And like it sounds, a spin is as if we're cutting it on a lathe. It's going to give me a spun profile versus slicing through it. I can have a upper profile, a lower profile, or both. In this case, we only need the upper profile. For machines with two turrets, one on the upper, one on the lower, we would want a full profile. So I'll go ahead and accept this. And if I go to Alt-1, my top view, and I go back to levels and turn off my solid part, you can see I now have a 2D turned profile. What I want to do at this point is I want to create a view sheet for this 2D profile. So I'll call it, I selected the plus sign. We'll call this 2D profile. I'll right click and save the view sheet bookmark. Now I want to also save one with the solid part. So I'll go back to the solid part. I'll turn off the 2D profile. I'll go to Alt-7 for ISO view. That's a nice view. I'll put it where I want it. And I will save that here. So I'll save the view sheet bookmark here. I'll rename it. We'll call it left spindle ISO view. Okay, so now I'm ready to set up my stock and chuck jaws. So I'm going to go back to levels. I'll turn on my 2D profile, turn off the solid part, go to Alt-1, or I can right click and go to top. We could have also used our 2D profile view sheet to get to the same place. I'll go back to toolpaths and I'll go to stock setup. So I want to set up stock in my left spindle. I'll go to properties, and I like to make it from 2 points. There's a variety of ways to make it. So if I say from 2 points, now if I select the O, it's going to go to the origin, O for origin. You can see it cycle through to the next point. It wants the second point. Now I'm going to hit the I key for intersection. So I'll hit I, and it wants to know the first entity, which I'll select this line, and the second entity here. So if I take a look at what I have right now, I'm going to preview my lathe boundaries. You can see that it created a point at the intersection of the back of the stock and the major diameter. So I have a piece of stock that is exactly as big as I need it to be right now, the minimum size I need. If I want to turn the OD, I need to add material to it. So I'm going to call it 2" 250, a nice round number. And for the overall length, I want to make this out of bar stock. So we're going to call this 7 inches. Now if I look at what I have now, you can see that I have a 7-inch length piece of stock and that I've got 1/8 of an inch of material, bigger than the major diameter. I'll hit enter to go back, and I also want to use margins. Now I could have added extra material here on the OD margin. I like to do it at the OD. I do want a right margin. I want a little bit of material to face, so I'm going to give it 20 thousandths. I could give it a left margin, but I've already given it extra bar length here. So at this point, you can actually see the extra little bit of material I added there. we are done with our stock for the left spindle. I could create stock for the right spindle here, but if we do a pick off, cut off, transfer, MasterCAM will create right spindle stock for us. Now in chuck jaws, for left spindle, which I have selected, I'll go to Properties. And I have some default settings here. They're going to work fine for us, default chuck jaws. But what I would like to do is I'd like to put a radius on the bottom of the chuck jaw as if I was boring it out or as if these jaws were made specifically for this part. So if I take a little bit less than half of 2" 250, I'll go 1" 120, hit enter. You can see that I now have a little radius down here. That should give me 6 points of contact when I chuck on it. I do want to check my parameters and make sure that my reference point is correct, which it is. It's on the front of my chuck jaws at this point. But I do want to tell MasterCAM where to position my chuck jaws. So if I take a look at what I have right now, you can see my chuck jaws are on Z0. Let's go back, and if I do them from stock, I want to take a look and see what I have now. So like I told it, it's from the stock, so it opened up to the 2" 250, and it's to the back end of the stock. So if I want to set a grip length here, I can set to 7" overall length minus 2" 750 minus a clearance distance for our cutoff. We'll call it 0.5. So I'll have a grip length of 3" 750, which will be from the back end of the stock. Let's take a look at that. So I'm 1/2 inch from here based on the math I did, and I'm 3" 750 from here, which is exactly half of it, I believe. So the other option I have is if I deselect from stock, I can do a user-defined position. Now, because I did from stock, it brought these values down here for me. And if I put a value of 0 in here, let's see what that looks like. So we're kind of back to where we were, only we are on the stock at this point in time. So now I want to take the overall length of the part, 2.750, minus my clearance distance for my cutoff, hit enter. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Well, we went in the wrong direction, so we know it needs to be a minus number, right? So we'll try that again. Minus 2.750 minus 0.5 minus 3" 250. Let's see what that looks like. So now we're back in the same spot. So we're 1/2 inch from the back of the part to the face of the chuck jaws. So you can go either way there. I'll leave this here for now. The last thing I need to do is create some right spindle chuck jaws. This would only be if we had a right spindle. Let's assume we do for now. So I'll go to Properties. And again, the default properties for this chuck jaw are fine. I do want to give it a radius that we're going to pick up on. So I had previously checked, and I believe we're going to pick up on a 2" diameter. So I'm going to make the radius 0.995. So again, I get a little radius there. If you're working with a hardened set of jaws that already has a radius there, you can put that radial value in there. I'll go to Parameters, make sure that my reference point is in the right place. Now here, it brought over the values from the left chuck jaws. I am going to pick off at 2 inches, so we'll say 2 inches. And it wants to know how far these chuck jaws are from the machine. We'll say select Z only. So I want these chuck jaws to be somewhere over here. So it's a plus value. So I'm going to put them at 24 inches. That's going to simulate a 24-inch distance between MasterCAM Z0 and the face of the chuck jaws in the right spindle. So if we look at everything we've done to this point, we have our 2D model sitting inside our stock sitting inside our chuck jaws, which we've placed. we have a set of right spindle chuck jaws. We could also do a new view sheet here called both spindles. So we'll right click, we'll save that. So now if we go back to our left spindle ISO view, we have that. We should have called this left spindle 2D profile. We have that. And then we have both spindles. Missing an S on the end there. So now we are ready to create some toolpaths.